Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today we're going to be taking a look at a very under-the-radar, premium, American-made folding knife with a very interesting aspect to it that we will touch on later in the review. But what we have right here is none other than the Mechforce M1. Now, before I go any further into this review, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by DLT Trading. Look them up for all of your knife and EDC needs, and hop on down to dlttrading.com, where you can find this knife link below, as well as a link that will take you to DLT's entire website to check out all the awesome offerings they have. Now, this knife right here, this Mechforce M1, not a brand that I am too familiar with. Sounds like they have more of a history in flashlights than folding knives. They've dove into the folding knife world, and what they've brought to us is something extremely unique and what I think pretty darn attractive. Let's go through the good old Wayne Sharp World rundown and take a look at some overall specs on this knife right here. We have an overall length of 8.2 inches with a blade length coming in at 3.5 inches and a blade width at just over 1 inch down at the bottom of the sharpened edge here. We have a blade thickness of 155 thousandths, so a little thicker than the average stock, and a blade material of M390, which, as you guys know, is always good to go. A drop point style blade, a flat grind, a handle length coming in at 4.7 inches, and a handle thickness of 523 thousandths. Handle width on this guy is 1.13 inches, with a handle material of titanium and carbon fiber scales, inlays to be precise. We have a frame locking mechanism, as well as a right hand tip up only carry, a weight coming in at a pretty reasonable 4.3 ounces. For as big of a knife as we have here, 4.3 ounces is completely good to go for me, and a price that is pretty darn decent for an American made premium piece. We're coming in at $350 for this guy. So I don't have too much of a gripe for $350, considering what you're getting, considering where it's coming from. It's not too bad. There's a lot more expensive options that have the materials that this knife does, especially the quality and performance, which we'll touch on here in just a second. But let's take a look at some size comparisons, get a better idea just how big this knife is. We have the Hogue K320 Nitron, and we also have, of course, the Spyderco PM2. So as you can see, it measures up pretty well with both of these knives. Try and get those tips even for you. There you go. There's those two. And I got two more for you. Two that I have really been enjoying lately. Not that I don't enjoy a great PM2 and K320 on a regular basis, but got the TRM Atom with some new titanium scales, as well as the good old gorgeous Chris Reeves Sebenza, another premium American-made knife. As you can see, the Sebenza is a little longer, and it's measuring up pretty well with the Atom, almost identical in length there. So, got your size comparisons done for you. Hope those did what they needed to do, and now let's start talking about this knife. There's one part of this review that we're going to go a little more in depth to, because there's a really, like I said, really interesting aspect to this knife. And as you're looking at it, you may notice just what is there or what is not there, and may not hit you right at the beginning. I completely missed it, actually. When I first started looking at this knife online, I completely missed what was going on. I'm sure some of you have already caught it. We'll touch on that in just a second. But in good old Wayne Sharp World fashion, let's start off by talking about this blade. And what we have is really a pretty simple and clean drop point with an edge coming in at 22 thousandths. So it's not going to be, the sliciest blade in the world, but it's going to be a very efficient cutter, a great EDC blade. Very smooth edge right out of the box. It passed the paper test with flying colors. And probably my two favorite things about this blade. One, the jimping here. This is, to me, perfect texture of jimping. gives a nice, good bite to your finger. Your thumb lands right on it where you want it to be. Excellent jimping. And another area of this blade that I really do love is the tip and kind of just the belly area. So kind of really the upper third, the top third of the blade. I really love blades that have kind of that nice beefy little tip and the belly. I like having a little more belly up towards the tip. It just works really well for a lot of the cutting tasks I do throughout a day. And I like how it flattens out along the bottom of the belly. I like having that closer up to the tip. It just really works for me, and I think it looks pretty darn good as well. In terms of the blade cutout, aesthetically, I think it's great. In terms of middle finger flicking, it's nothing too special in terms of that. We'll hit on that a little more when we get to the action. I'll explain that portion of it. I'm also really, the one thing, probably the biggest turnoff for me on this blade is this Mechforce logo. And in two ways. If I'm being completely honest, I really just don't like the way it looks. And also at $350, I'd like to see that logo centered a little more accurately. Maybe have it moved up a little, like right in between, in the middle of the flat, and not right touching down on the actual grind of the blade. It just looks a little off-centered, and for $350, you really have to cross all your T's and dot all your I's, to bring in an offering, top quality. You got to hit everything. I think they missed on that logo a little there. And not to mention, I've got to say, this blade is absolutely gorgeous. I love the blade shape. I love the look of it. But the big logo that just it kind of looks like a flower if you're looking at it from a distance, and it's kind of centered down a little low. It's really killing the show side aesthetics of this blade for me. I think it would look a lot better without it at all, or if maybe they just did a little M up towards, more in this area here. I don't know. Definitely think that could have been done a lot better. And at the very least, placed a little more accurately and centered a little better in the area that it's at. And then on the other side, you have the M390 logo, which is fine. I always love seeing the blade steel, especially when you have such a premium steel. I would much rather see that down here at the base of the blade on the flat. It just looks like it'd be a little more in place. It doesn't look horrible there, especially since it's, the lock side, the clip side. It's not exactly the side you're seeing all the time, but I would just like to see that down there. But I do have to say, overall, in terms of the actual blade shape, like I said, I do really enjoy the aesthetics of this blade. And what I enjoy even a little more is the aesthetics of this knife just closed. I mean, just closed. The OCD in me is just very happy right now. It is so clean. You don't have any of the blade popping out. You don't have anything crazy going on. You have that flipper tab, and while it would look pretty awesome with the flipper delete, trust me, you don't want to leave yourself with just that cutout to deploy the blade. And like I said, I'll hit on that a little later. But yeah, I really think you have a very beautiful, very attractive outline here. Borderline and kind of a gentleman's carry, but I think maybe due to the size and some other things, it may not pass as a gentleman's carry for some. But nonetheless, I think it's a very clean, very, very attractive design that I really do enjoy. Now, going into the handle and ergos, this is where things can get weird, at least from a disassembly standpoint. But first, let's talk about just the ergos, because the ergos themselves are quite fantastic. I have no issues whatsoever with the ergos of this knife. Everything falls in place in your hand, at least for me. It feels great. The index area here where your index finger goes in there perfectly. The chamfering all over the handle is just phenomenal. You look in and it's kind of more of like a flat corners with a little chamfering on each of the flattened areas. It just feels excellent. There's not a hot spot on this knife anywhere. The clip is fantastic in just about every way. It actually carries relatively deep. So you're looking at, let's see here, maybe about that much of the knife sticking out of your pocket. So very nice and relatively discreet carry. The clip does everything it needs to do without doing too much. Looks good. It actually even works really well with the design. Really good amount of clip tension, not too much, not too little. Excellent clip. and it feels great. Of course, there's obviously no hot spot. Big fan of that. Another thing you have back here on the back spacer, you have a nice back spacer, and I love the way it leads into this lanyard hole here. Quite a different way of doing that. And there is enough room to tie your lanyard down there without worrying about the tip of the blade getting into it. So that's always nice. But it's a pretty unique way to do that. You don't see that a whole lot. I'm sure it's probably been done before, but I can't remember the last time I've seen something like that. And it seems to just stick out to me a little more on this knife. So I really do like that back spacer and how they incorporated a lanyard hole, especially to where there's a lanyard hole there. But people that don't like lanyard holes don't have to really look at it when you're just looking at the knife. So very good job there. Yeah, overall, it just looks really good. That's the first thing that really pops out to me is just the overall aesthetics and design of the knife is great from an aesthetic standpoint. Then we get into the design standpoint of how this knife was assembled and more importantly, how you disassemble it. This gets weird. And to explain this to you to the best of my ability, I'm going to bring out the box here. We're going to take a look at that. Now, I won't be able to disassemble this knife. This was actually bought by a buddy of mine that he bought it, had it shipped to me to open up, review, and check out for you guys, which I really appreciate. He wanted to stay anonymous, so not going to throw his name out there, but you know who you are. Appreciate you, my man. And there's a very interesting part to start talking about with this knife. As you can see, I haven't brought it up yet, but there's no pivot. There's no pivot on this knife, or at least that's showing on the pivot. A completely hidden pivot. Now, that'll probably tell you where the pivot is, but how do you take a knife apart with no pivot? That's usually where you start, is the pivot and the screws along the sides. You take it apart. There's no screws. There's no pivots. That, I think, is another reason why it looks so damn good and so clean. Let's dig into this box here and see just how you take this knife apart. Got even nice little tabs here. So what you have here, the box itself is actually a very, very basic box, but a strong, sturdy box. You don't have to worry about it getting crushed during shipping, which is pretty important to me. I hate it when that happens. And we'll take this out and take a look at just what's in here. Here you have a nice, secure, solid, kind of harder foam molded area where the knife sits. And then in this package, you will also find a Ziploc baggie with some stuff, and let's take a look at the stuff. Let's see what stuff we have in here. We have the instructions, and then this is pretty cool. This is the certificate of authenticity. Very unique. Kind of, I won't even pull it out and get my fingerprints all over it, but looks to me like it's just, I'm assuming it's probably some type of steel card. Certificate of authenticity, the serial number, all the specs on it. You have M390 carbon fiber, ceramic ball bearings, the good old top-notch titanium. So pretty cool little certificate of authenticity there. You get a sticker, and then most importantly, you get instructions, and believe me, you are going to need them to take this knife apart. Oh, and what also comes with this, adhesive inserts, which is probably telling you what's going on now. You have 2 adhesive inserts, double-sided 3M tape, that is going to hold this show side scale on, and then you have 2 others that are going to hold on the back clip side scale. So this is where we're starting to get a little weird. It's not very often that you have to deal with adhesive strips to take apart and put together a knife. So let's dive into the instructions here, and there's one part here. They do a really good job. It's very basic instructions. It's just 1 page, so it's nothing too bad. But right here, let's hop into this and let's take a look. How to disassemble the knife. Remove the scale inlays, locate the slot hole at the inside of the knife frame as shown on the image to the right, using a small size rod or angled tool. Insert into the slot hole and push the scale inlay upward. So basically, this area down here, right? Let's see, let's get that, yeah. Right there, there's a little, that oval shape. You need to find a tool. They don't send a tool with the knife, so that's an issue. But you need to get some type of angled tool, push in there, pop off the show side scale. And I'm assuming once you do that, the adhesive strip in there is obviously not going to work as well, which is why they give you the replacement strips. You pop off that scale, and then when you get in there, then there's other screws to get into the actual pivot and take the knife apart. You'll probably also have to do that to the other side, I'm assuming, yes, to get into the pivot there. So you got to pop the scales off. You got to use adhesive strips to put them back together. Very, very, very odd / interesting. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing because it's a new thing and I've never done it, so I can't judge something until I've done it, but I know this. I'm not someone to take my knife apart a lot. I usually do it when I first get it, and just because it's kind of a thing, I feel like it makes the action better. Now, I will say, we'll get into the action here in just a second. This doesn't necessarily have to be taken apart right now, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this because I have two concerns. Well, two concerns. First, they need to supply a tool. For $350, I think they really do need to include a tool, even if it's just something simple, but something to get in there, something designed to make this task of popping the scale off as easy as possible. That's the most important thing. Really need to take care of that. And these 3M inserts. Now, I know 3M, when it comes to adhesive, it's about as good as it gets, so they're using top quality adhesive strips, but I want to see more of them. I definitely want to see probably 6 of these and 6 of these. Not 6 sheets, but 6 total pieces. So, yeah, 2 per sheet. So, 3 sheets of this, 3 sheets of this, 6 total, whatever. We need more of those because I'm assuming someone keeps this knife for, 5, 6, 7 years. They're going to be taking it apart more than 2 times. So those are my only concerns with this process. I don't think it's going to be hard. It's just a very weird step. But this is the question, and I want to know from you guys. Is the payoff of not having to see a pivot or any screws, is that worth I don't even want to say extra work, but is it worth the unique aspect of having to disassemble it in this certain way and using the strips to keep it looking this clean and as good as it does? So let me know your thoughts there. Is it worth the trade-off? That's mainly what I want to know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So that's the really unique aspect. As much as I would want to take this knife apart, my friend that sent this to me, he did request that I don't. He wanted to be the first to do that, so I have to respect that. It's probably pretty basic in terms of you unscrew the pivot, and I'm assuming there's probably screws back here going somewhere into the back spacer that basically pulls the knife apart. So I don't think disassembling it's going to be any type of a problem. You just got to get the scales popped off. So very unique there. Now, as I said earlier, do you have to disassemble this right out of the box? You don't. At least the example I have, the action is pretty damn good right out of the box. From a flipper standpoint, the action's great. It's kind of a unique action in terms of the detent is a little more. It kind of reminds me of the Weesnex Mini Buster, in all honesty. It kind of feels like it has a bigger detent ball. And you know what? I haven't even looked at it. Let's take a look. It does. So this does have a bigger detent ball than average. And that makes complete sense because it does remind me somewhat of the Weesnex Mini Buster. Even in the way the flipper tab is designed, I definitely get some Weesnex Mini Buster vibes, which is kind of a good thing because a lot of people really love the Weesnex Mini Buster. If you've heard of it or if you've handled it, you probably liked it. So flipping action is really good. What's not ideal is the middle finger flicking area, this cutout area up here. The issue with it is, one, it's pretty close to the pivot in terms of, I'm assuming the pivot's like right here, so the cutouts are right here. So usually you want those separated apart a little more. For example, the PM2, the cutout's bigger and it's farther from the pivot. So it's just very natural middle finger flicking action, very enjoyable, very fun. Spyderco is probably the best at a middle finger flicking cutout. You can do it, but it's kind of tough because you're a little closer to the pivot than you want to be, and sometimes since it's so close into the handle, your middle finger may be putting some pressure on the frame lock area, which isn't ideal. But as you can see, I've done it now twice with no real issue. It can be done. I'm just saying it's not nearly as enjoyable as a lot of other knives that have cutouts to middle finger flick. So I do honestly think that this, the cutout here is more of an aesthetic thing. I think this knife was designed to be a flipper first. And in regards to that, I do think the flipper is fantastic. No real issue with the flipper outside of maybe I wouldn't mind seeing one more or maybe two more notches of jimping down there. But as you can see, there's no real issue with flipping the blade out. So all in all, the action's solid. The flipper's really good. The middle finger flicking can be done, just not ideal. Overall thoughts on this knife. Design-wise, in terms of aesthetics, I think it's great. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. Super clean. One of the cleanest designs I've seen in quite a very long time. Quality is great. Flipping action's great. Ergos are fantastic. The only thing that I'm still really on the fence about is the disassembly process. And it's not so much the process itself, it's what's missing from the process. The tool, a few extra adhesive strips, that's what I would really want to see added with the original knife when you pull it out of the box. I don't want to have to try and rig up a tool to pop it out. I don't want to have to, call Mechforce and try and get 3M inlays for this, 2-3 years down the road. Those are my concerns. Outside of that, I really am a fan of this knife. I really do like it. I think it's a decent value. I think the quality is right up there with some of the better made American premium knives. I don't have a lot of gripes. I really am a fan of it overall, but I am still somewhat on the fence of that disassembly process. So there you go, guys. Very interesting knife. Very nice knife with some quirks. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about this? Of course, primarily regarding that disassembly. Do you see this trend continuing? Personally, I don't. But I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you've handled it before. I really hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And until the next one, I'm out.